Hello everyone, today we're going to be taking a look at some new motors. These are the Hyperlite 2207.5 1922KV motors, and I switched to these motors after running these Brother Hobby Returner R3 2206 2140KV motors for a year. Now the reason why I switched to these motors is, first, I wanted to go up in stator size to attempt to get a little bit better response on this quad, so a little more snappiness. And I also wanted to increase my throttle resolution by dropping the KV. So these motors actually have a lower KV than the old motors in an attempt to reduce the RPM range of these motors and therefore make the throttle a little less sensitive and give me more control. So my goal actually was not more power, even though these motors are larger. So let's run through the specs of this motor. It has a 19 by 19 millimeter mounting pattern, naked bottom, compared to the 16 by 19 millimeter normal, like traditional base of the old motor. It has 9 millimeter bearings compared to the 8 millimeter bearings of the old motor. So the idea behind that is the balls and the races of these bearings should be larger, which means that they should hold up a little better after a lot of crashing. Once again, the stator in this motor is larger. It's a 2207.5, so it's 1.5 millimeters taller than this 2206 that I was running, and that equates to a 25% increase in stator volume, which I think is very significant. The magnets on both these motors are N52H curved magnets. However, I noticed that on this newer motor the magnets are actually thinner, which I think is for weight savings. The shaft on the new motor is a titanium hollow shaft, compared to the old motor has a steel shaft that goes into an aluminum shaft that looks like is part of the bell. Something interesting to note about these new motors is that despite the larger stator, it actually has the prop sit on the motor at the same height as the old motor. So with all these different design features, how much does this motor weigh? So I weighed it with the wires without the prop nut, and it weighs 32.7 grams, compared to the old motor with the wires without the prop nut weighs 29 grams. So a little bit heavier than the old motor despite all the weight saving stuff, but that's kind of to be expected with the larger stator size. I will note that the wires on this motor are about an inch or two longer than the wires on this motor, so just take that into account. I also weighed the quad with the old motors and the new motors, so the new motors added 9 grams to the quad, which I think is a decent trade-off for that 25% increase in stator volume. And that brings the all-up weight of this quad to 648 grams, and that is with a GoPro Hero 6 and a China Hobbyline 4S battery. So this quad's getting kinda on the porky side, but the 6-inch props make up for it. So with all these specs, weights, and whatnot out of the way, let's go ahead and see how these motors perform in the air. Okay, so my first reaction when I took off with these motors was that they actually feel almost identical to the old motors. Now, after flying them a little more, I do notice they are slightly snappier, but it's very minor. It's not a night and day difference. Maybe I should, mess with my tune, and I probably could get this to feel a lot more responsive, but I wanted to run it on the same tune I was running on the old motors to get that equal comparison. So a little more snappy, but not really 25% more snappy like you would expect from a 25% larger stator. But the math never works out that easily. As far as that throttle resolution goes, I definitely think that these motors spin slower at full throttle because I am only pulling in the 80s for amps at full throttle on this quad using these props. Compared to on the old motors, I would pull in the hundreds of amps. I think I definitely achieved the increase in throttle resolution because it seems pretty evident that the RPM range is less for these new motors, which is my goal. I'm sure you could get a lot more power out of these motors and a lot more thrust if you opted for the higher KV variants, but once again, power was not my goal for this motor. Really, I don't have much else to say. It's very slightly more responsive, and I did succeed in getting better throttle resolution. So let me know down in the comments what you think about this motor, and please like this video if you liked it, and get subscribed to see more content like this in the future. Thanks for watching.